Let's dive right in. Today, we are dissecting something incredibly powerful, the exact blueprint used to translate complex, dense business ideas into engaging, easy-to-understand educational content. If you've ever wondered how the absolute best educational explainers manage to keep you glued to your screen while teaching you high-level concepts, well, you're in the right place. We're going to look right under the hood and break down the anatomy of the perfect explainer step by step.
The absolute first pillar of our blueprint is the strong hook. When you're building an explainer, those first 0 to 10 seconds, they're literally a make or break moment. You can't just start with some dry definition. Instead, you hit them with a relatable statement like, business finance sounds complicated, but it's actually easier than you think. You're basically reaching through the screen, acknowledging a pain point your audience feels, and immediately throwing them a lifeline.
So, why does a hook like that work so well? Because it generates curiosity, and curiosity is the engine of any great explainer. When you validate the viewer's frustration and promise a simplified solution, you're transitioning them from passive scrollers into active learners. You're setting them up to actively crave the solution you're about to provide. Without that initial spike of curiosity, even the best information in the world is just going to fall on deaf ears.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the perfect explainer blueprint, defining our core visual elements, dialing in the audio and editing, breaking down the 8-part structure, looking at practical business application prompts, and finally, a quick summary. All right, Section 1, the perfect explainer blueprint. The foundation of a successful explainer relies heavily on exactly how you engage viewers right after that initial hook. Our blueprint demands constantly asking questions throughout the explainer. Things like, what is business finance? Why does every company need it? Where does the money go? By posing these questions right before you answer them, you're creating a Socratic, high-retention environment. You aren't just lecturing at them, you're having a conversation. You're prompting the viewer's brain to try and guess the answer a split second before you give it to them, which keeps them totally locked in. And once they're locked in, you have to follow the crucial rule of explaining just one idea at a time. Instead of throwing some massive financial formula at the viewer, we start with business, introduce money, flow to revenue, subtract expenses, which leaves us with profit, and ultimately gets us to cash flow. You absolutely must build complex concepts from simple, foundational ideas. If you try to explain everything all at once, you're just going to overwhelm the learner. Moving right along to Section 2, defining core visual elements. Because in a stellar explainer, the visual is just as important as the vocal. This brilliantly illustrates the golden rule of visual style. Every single spoken sentence must have a matching visual. There can be absolutely no empty screens. If the narration says, money enters the company, you need to see coins moving into a building icon. If you say growth, show a rising graph. Don't just show a picture of a random happy guy in a suit. This dual coding ensures the viewer is absorbing the information through both their eyes and their ears at the exact same time. To pull this off, the blueprint relies heavily on a very specific style of motion graphics. Flat illustrations, clean infographics, animated icons, and simple characters. Why this specific style? Because it's clean and distraction-free. Using smooth transitions, subtle zoom-ins, and animated arrows gives the explainer a highly premium educational quality. It doesn't look like a cluttered mess. It looks like a high-end corporate training tool that's incredibly easy to digest. Let's pivot to Section 3, defining audio and editing, because how an explainer sounds totally dictates its pacing and the viewer's comfort level. Let's break down the optimal narration style. The voice delivering the information needs to strike a very specific balance. It's got to be calm and professional, yet friendly and deliberately slow. You're essentially adopting the persona of a confident teacher. When the voice is relaxed and authoritative, it signals to the viewer that they're in good hands. It makes dense financial or business information feel accessible and safe rather than intimidating. And supporting that voice is the background music. The requirements here are strict. It must be played at a very soft volume. Think of a light piano or a modern, subtle electronic beat that creates a corporate feel. The music is basically the professional heartbeat of the explainer. It provides momentum and fills the dead air, but it must never, ever overpower the narration or distract from the core educational message. Now notice this crucial ratio, 3 to 5. Human attention spans are incredibly fragile right now. Studies actually show our brains start to seek new stimuli after just a few seconds of static imagery. So literally, every 3 to 5 seconds, something on screen must change. A new graphic popping up, a subtle camera zoom, or some kinetic text animation. By introducing a new visual stimulus as frequently, you're constantly refreshing the viewer's attention and preventing them from zoning out. All right, Section 4, the 8-part structure. This is our master timeline where the magic really happens. So here is that master timeline.
A 10-minute explainer is meticulously divided up. You have your 20-second hook to introduce the relevance, followed immediately by an intro telling them exactly what they're going to learn. Then, minutes 1 through 6 methodically build 3 concepts, one right on top of the other. At minute 6, you ground all that theory with a real-world small business application. Finally, you dedicate the last 2 minutes to a swift summary and a call to action. It is a perfectly balanced diet of theory, application, and review.
Section 5. Practical Business Application Prompts. Let's look at how modern creators are actually executing this using AI tools.
If you're using an AI explainer generator, you can't just vaguely ask it to make a business explainer. You have to deconstruct our blueprint into a master visual prompt. You literally command the AI to use a modern 2D animated infographic style, dictate a strict blue, white, and green corporate color palette, and specify kinetic typography. By being this specific and demanding a 4K educational style, you force the AI to generate those premium, flat vector designs we talked about earlier. And the same strictness applies to the AI narration prompt. When generating your script, you must instruct the tool to embody everything we've just learned. Tell it to use conversational, simple English and to actively ask engaging questions. Force it to explain one concept at a time and strictly pair the narration with visual cues every 2 to 3 sentences. You also mandate a 1-sentence recap after major sections. This prompt essentially hardwires the entire explainer blueprint right into your script.
Finally, Section 6, Summary and Final Thoughts. Let's tie a neat little bow on everything we've covered today.
So rapid-fire review time. The crucial point is this. Creating a captivating explainer isn't about luck. It is about following a rigid, proven framework. You absolutely must start with that 10-second relatable hook. You got to teach one concept at a time in a simple, logical progression. You have to match every single spoken sentence with a visual element and ensure that visual changes every 3 to 5 seconds. And wrap all of that inside the strict 8-part chronological structure we analyzed. That is your formula for success. Which leaves me with one final question for you to ponder. How will you use this 8-part structure and AI prompt framework to build your next business explainer? You now have the exact blueprint that top creators use to make complex topics endlessly fascinating. The tools are in your hands, the structure is demystified, and the canvas is completely blank. I absolutely can't wait to see what you build with it. Thanks for learning with me today, and keep exploring.